Hi everybody, Dr. Carol Blaney here, and today I would like to share my thoughts on existence. Everyone lately says, that is when I watch my favorite YouTube channels and different physicists giving seminars and different, I would say, not enlightenment gurus, but just people that are on the edge of understanding reality, and also people that carry the ancient knowledge forward, are saying that over and over, matter doesn't exist, it's all in your head, it's all fake, and it's all about information, it's about bits, it's about figments, and it's all a dream. And even the ancient sages said this. But as a physicist, before I agree to such seeming nonsense, and I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm saying that it seems like nonsense to the normal everyday mind. And I'm already very well aware of things that seem one way and aren't that way. For example, an atom is mostly space, and we certainly think that sounds ridiculous, right? But when you hear it over and over and over, and everybody agrees with it, and you read the data and everything matches up, you start to think, you've got a point. It is mostly space. And so then you move forward and you try to build your reality based on building blocks that have a high probability of being at least somewhat correct. And another point about that is you always want to remember what these assumptions are, so that if you ever have to go backwards to correct some of the early assumptions, you can still do that. And Einstein was a master at this, and that's how he came up with special theory of relativity. Was he backed up and realized that a lot of the assumptions he had made were wrong. He also played with assumptions, and one of them being, what if the speed of light was constant from all viewpoints? And it seemed to work. And nobody really understands why, but I think nowadays there are people proposing why the speed of light seems to be constant with our instruments. So I'm starting today's sharing of my thoughts by saying, no, as a physicist and a chemical engineer, I have a very different view. I want to start with clinging a little bit to what I call realism, that things are real and that matter is real. Matter is really something. It's not nothing. It's not a made-up set of information only. I believe that the information contained in matter is an emergent phenomenon of that matter, and it's not saying that the matter doesn't exist, because you have to have something to store the information. So I think that matter and information arise together. Not that a universe of pure light and pure wiggles in the ether couldn't have information. It's just that I haven't figured out how you could store information in such a universe, because light travels so quickly. Now you might have little instances of information where one light wave passes another light wave, and their gravitational attraction, yes, photons have gravitational attraction, might communicate to each other and share some kind of an information. And so that type of information, yes, is contained in every corpuscle and wiggle of the universe. But from a practical point of view on Earth, let's just say that I hope to share with you my thoughts on why matter is real. Because I feel that not only is my view on the matter more realistic and more useful to think that matter is real, but it's also more satisfying. Because you see, to say that mass isn't real, to say that matter isn't real, is like saying a tornado isn't real, that a tornado doesn't exist just because it dissipates, or because you can put your hand through it if you had a really big, strong hand, and it would dissipate. But that doesn't mean, in my view, that the tornado isn't real. It is real. It may not be solid and eternal, but that doesn't mean that it's not real, because all you need to be real, I state, is to be measurable and to exist for more than 0 seconds. So that would be that it's real. So another explanation of why I assert a tornado is real and not a figment of our imagination is because it knocks over houses. So how would you explain something that knocks over houses to not be real? You have a very real evidence for it. Okay, so moving on, I'm just outlining my talk. Now first, we look at the nature of what we see with our eyes, what we touch, and so forth. The distinct thing about matter is that it stops your hand if you hit it. Or in the case of a liquid or a gas, it slows down your hand and you can feel that. Therefore, it has inertia. So mass has inertia. What is inertia? Well, you know what it is on an everyday level. It's something that slows down your hand. It's something that requires energy to accelerate it, to move it, to take it from not moving to moving, or if it's already moving, to stop it. It takes energy, and that's what I'm calling inertia. Now, even light has inertia, but since it's going so fast that we don't normally detect its inertia, because it's like smoke. It just goes by so quickly that by the time you get your instruments out ready to measure it, it's a million miles away. So where mass, on the other hand, is a form of, shall we say, condensed light. And so its inertia is stationary, because all of light spread out inertia is concentrated into what seems like us humans with our instruments to be a tiny little point. So in actuality, the way I see it, and the way many others see it, is one form of mass in this realm, in this size scale, in this universe, is an electron. That's our most elementary form of matter that I know of, that we can say beyond a shadow of a doubt is something that remains, that's not going to change its form while we're living our lifetime, and that we can measure it. And it does things, it has inertia, it has a mass. So in my Blaney theory of etheric flux, I teach that a high energy gamma, when forced into a circle where its own gravitational energy holds it into a circle, that high energy gamma wave is formed into an electron. It's like an Ouroboros, like a snake swallowing its tail. It's superimposed upon its own spine, such that its desire to go straight and unwind is balanced by its desire to attract itself with what you call gravity, what we measure as gravity, what we think of as gravity, that force. And you can calculate its diameter, you can draw its shape. It's sort of a donut shape, because the light photon is more of a tornado shape, sort of a vortex that's very stable and self-sustaining. And when you curve it upon itself to where it's sucking in ether, sucks in its own self, it forms into a stable shape that's donut shaped, sort of like a toroid, but it has a clockwise or an anti-clockwise handedness, a chirality to it. Inside this toroid is a fantastic golden spiral flow that's composed of patterns of the ether, and it extends outwardly to infinity. That is, its etheric acceleration vector field that's attributable to that electron, that speck of mass, is very active and beautiful inside, but then it goes out to infinity. And in fact, every entity has an etheric acceleration vector field that defines it and extends out to infinity. So we're all connected. And every entity can be felt by every other entity. We affect each other no matter what we do. By the way, this explains why quantum mechanics was proven right. That is, if you measure particle B that's entangled to particle A, and you do it 100 miles away, if they're still entangled, and you have to be careful to keep them entangled, you can't disrupt their entanglement. So if they're still entangled and you measure B, it actually affects A. You're causing A to go into a certain configuration when you take a measurement on B, because at that instant, when B goes into a certain state, A becomes the opposite of that. Okay, so we're not going to talk any more about that. I just want to get my thought out about what mass is and its etheric flow pattern. I sort of talked about the toroidal shape, and it sort of adds to the etheric flow pattern. It's like an additive wave, just like waves on the surface of a lake add together. And when you have a positive peak and a negative peak and they flow over each other, it goes to zero just for an instant. But there is energy in that zero. It looks like there's nothing there, but there's actually some tension there, because there's a rightward flowing wave and a leftward flowing wave with the associated pressure distribution of the water at that point and all the molecules of the velocity and everything. So its center point region, that is the electron's center point regions, seems to us to have inertia. And by center point region, I mean from our large scale of existence, when we look at an electron, we seem to see it in a certain point. So it seems at that point that there's some sort of inertia there. And in fact, it is hard to move. You have to put energy into it to move that electron, or any piece of mass for that matter. That energy that you put into it goes into the momentum that you impart into it. That energy goes into the electron and makes it move, spin direction, or whatever it is you're perturbing. But it's still real, it's still concrete. So now scientists say that our universe is unique because it can only exist with our particular set of constants. And they list the constants and they go out to 10 plus decimal places and they say, oh my God, this is the only constant that will make our universe exist. And if you change the constant, nothing seems to exist. There's no mass around. Nothing can be formed. And my assertion is that, yeah, this could possibly be the only universe, or the only what I call realm. By realm, what I mean is the set of, quote, frequencies, or the set of anything you can talk about in this universe, such as an electron or a photon, or anything you can measure, or a tree or a person, or anything that we see and believe is here and is here, we call that something in our realm. But there's some things outside of our realm that we can't measure, we don't have access to. For example, down at the small scale, size scale of just, let's say, 10 to the minus 42 times the Planck's length, down there, we can't measure anything in there because it's too small for our instruments to measure. At least it is nowadays. So what I mean by our realm is what we can observe and measure. So our realm has mass, and it has those specific constants. And all the other universes that exist on top of us or through us maybe don't have that constant. They have a different constant. They don't have mass. So those are the realms that have the beings that people call light beings, I believe, if indeed those are true. And there's no way we can know with our instruments, probably, because there's no interaction that we know about yet to where we can actually measure some entity or other dimension that exists on top of us. I mean, I don't want to use the word dimension because that's overused and used incorrectly, but other realms on top of us don't have any way for us to measure it. But all they have is wiggles and whirls and figure eights and perhaps tornadoes in this shared ether. We all share the same ether. All the realms share the same ether. But this is the only realm where the humans live where mass exists. So that is to say there's no toroids in any of the other realms. The toroids, where the mass gets concentrated into what seems like to us a point, but it's more like a toroid, or other stable forms of vortices that are stable enough to exist over long periods of time so that they can be arranged and store information. Those are what I call mass. So our universe does have mass. We are unique. Our universe is just right. And so we're rare. We humans are rare. All the other beings that exist with us are rare too. All the other beings that aren't in this realm, that don't have mass, that have different constants, for example, they exist only as lighter, less inertia entities. So their forms may have some subtle inertia, like a light wave, but we may not be able to detect it because, we should be able to detect it if they're made of light. And any realm that is only light may one day be able to be measured. But anything that's made out of what looks to us like light, but it's at a smaller or a larger scale, we wouldn't be able to measure that because it's just too vast or too tiny for our instruments to pick up. In other words, what I'm implying, and many others have implied this, I'm not saying anything new, is that there's nested flow patterns in the ether. And so there's nested universes below us, within us, inside my body, inside my coffee cup, everywhere you look, and then bigger. The galaxy is, the handle of a teacup. And again, all nothing new here. Why is this theory satisfying? Why am I even talking about this? Lighter, less inertia entities like, say, photons perhaps, or of size scales we can't see or measure, smaller or bigger, or even our size but on a different radio station, a different set of frequencies, for example. That is to say, the other realms, they all have a different pattern of the etheric wiggles that doesn't seem to be picked up on our instruments. So why is this useful? Okay, well, for me, it makes me appreciate the uniqueness of this universe. For one, since matter can sit for a long time and remain matter, you can arrange it to store information, and you can share it over and over in the brain, in your hard drive, in books, in DNA. And we can procreate, and we can feel emotions, which are only possible with our light and mass-filled particles and bodies, with its hormones and nerves. Some Eastern religions teach that to be human is a rare and special opportunity to grow and to evolve by experiencing emotions and, I guess, transcending them. So considering that there must be an infinity of realms without matter and only one realm with matter, this realm, there's got to be a long, long, long waiting line of beings that are anxious to be born on Earth. To be born on Earth so that they can wait for almost all of eternity to come here so that they can live here and have a few thrills. And for me, it's the thrill of petting my cat and of eating fresh spring greens, or of dancing and laughing and breathing fresh air. And I suggest you do the same. Well, that's all I have to share today. I hope you have a beautiful day. Peace, everybody.